medio dentro, medio fuera, todo, nada.
Welcome to another Shot Talk. I'm very, very excited for this one. This is for Netflix's film, Emilia Pérez, which on record is my favorite film of the year. You know, I honestly can't remember last time I felt so invested emotionally in the characters. And I found myself literally yelling at the screen, like, no, 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 or feeling such anxiety. And so the film was wonderful. It's incredibly audacious, beautifully lit, and the camera work and the emotional arc of these characters. It's got so much to say. And I'm very happy to be talking to the cinematographer, Paul Guilhaume, today. And welcome, Paul. Welcome to ShotDeck and to Shot Talk.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm glad to be there.
Yeah. So it's funny because, you know, I made a film this year that also has, you know, diegetic singing in it. The film, you know, singing that basically is an extension of the dialogue. So it was really an interesting experience for me to watch your film because it's this incredibly gritty sort of crime story, but it's also more than that. It's a story about the human experience and living your true self. And it's a story about love, and it's a story about family, and it's a story about being who you are, set in this incredibly violent and disturbing world. And I couldn't help but think about some of those overlaps, you know, and it was an interesting thing. So for me, it had a secondary experience of like imagining sort of the same questions I asked myself as I approached, you know, Joker Folie à Deux. What was first? Yeah, what was your experience in terms of being attached to this film and starting the experience of making it, and what were your early thoughts as you approached the film? And maybe speak a little bit to how you met the director Jacques Audiard and all of that.
Well, I had met Jacques on the French TV spy series The Bureau. We had worked together on the two last episodes of the series, the finals, and then we teamed up again for Paris 13th District, which is a small film, a black and white film happening in Paris, more a love story between different characters, and this film was almost like, you know, like a first film in a way, because it was very simple. It was this kind of nouvelle vague feeling almost, but set in a modern environment with what is love at the age of screens and apps and Tinder and everything. And I received then, after this film, so the first versions of Emilia Pérez, and it was still very strange because it was written like an opera with 5 acts, like a libretto, and but Jacques was still hesitating to maybe shoot 2 films in a way, shoot one realistic film just with the story, that would have been probably a lot of handheld in Mexico, like in location, very gritty in a way. And we were talking a lot about this great film that's Amores Perros, and
Sure.
that's a film that's been with me always, I think. Like, so when I received this script and the project was that, I was super excited. And on the same time, he wanted to do an opera of the same story and maybe to do it on stage. It was not very clear. And the projects, after extensive location scouting and meetings and thinking what the films would be, became only one. It was this musical.
And how, and so when it became this musical, like, because had you ever done a musical, or had you ever sort of, I'm sure extensively, some music videos and things like that, but in terms of a narrative film that was
No, and a narrative film with music and choreography, never actually. I knew like Jacques said very often that he didn't like musicals. So it was a super strange thing, like to start this and to know that the music would be so important that we couldn't even edit it out in the end, because the all of the action of the drama was happening actually during the what should have been dialogue scenes often, and they were replaced by songs or lyrics or dances.
La derrota de la mala fe. Cuando hablamos de violencia.
We had very clear conscience when we were doing this film that it was going to be a musical anyway, you know, like there was no other way, even though it was an extensive shooting with a lot of scenes. There was no way to even cut one of the pieces that we were filming in a way.
Was it intimidating? Was it, as a cinematographer, when you sort of then got into the nuts and bolts of, okay, now how are we going to conceive of when the characters break into song, how and when, and you know, in a lot of ways, like I said, the sort of, even your talk about like, we don't even like musicals, but what we're making a musical, it makes me think a little bit of my experiences. And your film is quite successful in sort of, again, doing the thing that I think is really beautiful, which is it's just an extension of their emotions and their dialogue. Just, you have some choreography that's actually quite stunning and really sort of incredibly crafted, that is perhaps a bit different, but yeah, did you watch any musicals? Did you guys talk about musicals that you might have liked and why? Did you go into any of that, or stay away from musicals at all and did another thing?
Jacques, during preparation, just sent me a film that, and saying just something like, this film is stunning, and it's called A New Old Play by Qiu Zhongjiang, and it's a Chinese film. I mean, it's in Chinese, and he told us that yeah, he wanted to be as free as these filmmakers in a way, and the film had a very theater vibe sometimes. It's very frontal. It's very often composed frames like a painting, and the characters maybe will just move left to right in these wide frames. And I think that he just, when he saw this film, he realized something about his own desire this time, and the emotion that conveys this film, this opera, A New Old Play, combined with the crazy story he had already about this narco do whatever she wanted to be in the beginning, like and change everything and live this life of violence to focus on something else. Yeah, these two desires converged into one, and I think the genesis of the whole thing. And so he knew he wanted to be very free. He kept saying like, I wanted to feel like a workshop. I wanted to feel like a film school on set almost. And he just encouraged me to build a team with younger people, or people from music videos, or people from other worlds that maybe would not be necessarily normally casted for that project. And for example, I had the pleasure to team up again with Sasha Nasseri, a Steadicam operator, with whom I had worked on Rosalia's music video Saoko, for example, and who was just shooting his second feature ever on that film, and who is a superstar of music video Steadicam operators. So he just arrived with all of his background of how to film choreography, music, dance, and with an ability to find a lot of solutions also on the day when whatever you had planned just maybe shows its limits at one point of the filming, and just to push it always forward in a way, or further than what we could think.
I think it's interesting because talk to me a little bit about this clip.
Eres cojo de nacimiento, en tu próximo puto retraso de pago acabarás en la silla de rueda, lo sabe. El que perdió su mano, sé muy puntual si eres corrupto.
Yeah, so this sequence was quite unique in the film because in a way we were extremely prepared in terms of lighting. The lighting idea was here very early in the project, so we can then go a bit deeper into the tech choices we made for lighting. But and the choreography was extremely prepared too, obviously. Zoe had been working like months on it. The thing that was not known in advance is how the space would be exactly once it would be built, and how to film it in a way camera-wise, as opposed to the market scene at the beginning of the film, where like Damien Jallet, the choreographer, and ourselves had been working in prep just to find every shot and even every cut. Here we didn't really, actually we had an idea of what the camera would do, but in the day it was just maybe not vibrant enough. It was not violent enough. It had not enough energy. So we just skipped the dolly idea that we had first, and we just used 20 millimeters from Tribe 7, the 20.7, on the Steadicam, and we broke the song into 8 main pieces and tried to find a like kind of oneer for each one of these, and then another shot that would just able us to edit it and to change the rhythm if necessary. So on the day we just worked pieces by pieces, and Sasha and the choreographer and us and Zoe were just like trying to figure out, okay, on this line the camera will be here, and then it will just move super fast and be on this other side, and then maybe do a 360, and that's something in which Sasha actually excels. He's super good at that. On this music video from Rosalia, Saoko, we wanted to have a very short lens on a robotic arm, on a motion control, just to be able to move around her face super fast. And the tests were actually pretty annoying to do. It was a lot of coding and
Of course, that's
and
the whole thing. Suddenly, it's the most technical thing, and then everything goes. I wondered that about this specifically. I thought that kind of abrupt speed, is that like the death grip on Steadicam, or was this perhaps done with a motion control? So yeah, it's interesting to say
So yeah,
that.
in the end, it's inspired by motion control movement.
Yeah.
But on the Saoko music video, we realized that it was much more efficient to do it with Sasha. He's also a pretty tall guy. He's able to just launch the Steadicam and stop it like on 2 centimeters. You know, it's like it's almost like stops instantaneously, and he has this very good energy and sense of how to put drama in a shot at each time. So the yeah, we my late friend Valentin Petit on this shoot was calling him Sasha Motion Control, and that's really the idea that just finally made the scene camera-wise. It was inspired by this energy, and the lighting, on the other hand, was it was, I think, maybe even in the script, that the idea that there would be this white light pointed on Zoe. But it's a time of the film where she takes control actually over the film, over the story, and even like over cinematography. She's able to point this light to whatever person she decides, and the light is just following her wherever she goes. So we just had like on the 4 corners of the room 4 RoboSpots, a very strong light that's motorized, and we had this infrared camera in the ceiling just for an operator to be able to follow her or follow whatever he wanted to at each time. And the 4 RoboSpots are converging to the center, to this one point, and you have another operator on the grandma console just selecting which projector is on and which is off, and what is the intensity of all of them. So we were aiming to have one main light at any time, and just no fill light at all, and just this very rough harshness of just one strong light.
This transition sometimes, and you do it a bunch in the film, which I really appreciated, which is this idea of like the world going black and then you're isolating your characters in a very small place, right? And I think that that I think was happens in this little scene, which was very emotional for me. This realization when Zoe sees the now new Emilia Pérez.
Yeah, and on this specific line, like she says bingo, and
Bingo,
everything.
so good.
Esto. Bingo. Mierda.
Everything turns to the world
Right.
shuts down, actually. I don't know. I think there is something like from Jacques' filmography or language. It's almost like the Spike Lee's dolly shot. Jacques has always been doing this, what he called the mano, which is like a handmade vignette around a character's face on a specific moment of the story, and like it's such a signature that anyone else that tries to do it, it's like in the fashion of Jacques even today. You can see this in A Prophet, for example, a lot. And in this film, I think a lot of the manos were replaced by an actual shutdown of the world. Instead of just blackening the world around the face, we would just switch off the world, and that was made possible by the studio. The film is 80% studio, and that able us to switch off even the sun or the sky on a specific line, like we do maybe on Selena Gomez's piece Bienvenida, for example, each time she switches from one space to the other. So that was a tool that Jacques used very joyfully, I must say, when he understood that all of the lighting fixture were dimmable. We had made the choice not to use almost any HMI for us to be able to always change the light during the takes. So some suns are tungsten and 90% of the fixture are LEDs, which is more and more common, but it was just giving us this freedom of sometimes improvising also the light on the scene, which was not the case for this one. It was planned. But
this little thing here, which you also do a couple times, these kind of like hyper flash like beats on the music, where like the exposure sort of just like bumps. It's like you're doing a bump bar on the dimmer board. When that present itself, and was that part of this idea of like, oh, I wanted to feel like it's like film school, try anything kind of thing, because I'd never really seen that before, but it was really lovely.
Yeah, actually it was like there is this guy Julian who was operating the grandma. My gaffer Tomagaro had just told me that he had to be on the project anyway. So for this particular scene, we knew that on one hand we didn't have any money to have the real courthouse that we could have dreamed of, and on the other hand that it shouldn't be too realistic. It had to set the movie in a kind of a mood that tells to the audience that we are not trying to make it look like a real courthouse in Mexico, for example. So as you can see, there is no ceiling. There are just projectors, and they build a pattern that we had decided on. The software depends too, which just enables you to place fixtures in a space, and that we decided just to make this ceiling exist only by the fixtures, and that was the first part of how we got there. And then on the day, I remember Julian, the grandma operator, just adding this little blimp of light on some tempos, and Jacques saying, "Okay, I want this." So we just worked on this a little more, and this is how it happened. And then I think we just reinforced it a little bit in post, maybe by 20%. So you can see it comes from a practical effect, but we made it even shinier.
There's also this magical thing at times when you said, and there's a couple times that it happens, like when Selena Gomez is falling back in love with her lover and she comes out of a car, her high heel shoes have this little sparkle, or even when Emilia's reunited with her kids for the first time and they're in the bedroom when her daughter, it's just such an amazingly emotional, lovely scene when she says, "You smell like Papa." There's this laser thing happening inside that space. Tell me
yes, you saw it.
And I couldn't tell if it was integrated in or it was superimposed on top of, but it was really an interesting effect. If you could speak to that a little bit.
No, there is something with Jacques actually about shine. He always told me in prep and in post, like, I want my film to be shiny. And then the operator job is it's to guess actually what it means. But I have an idea of that. It's like in Renaissance painting when the painters used to add what we call the réau, which is actually highlights in the frame. So maybe just a candle in a part of the frame, or just it's the idea that if there is a white point, then the black point starts to be very deep and dark. And actually, if you don't have a reference of strong highlight in a frame, then it very often looks gray in a way, especially if you screen the film or if you see it projected. That's so that's really an obsession for me, is how to add highlights in almost every frame, at least when it's necessary, and or if it's not in a frame, it's in the continuity, just to have a very bright shot. If you're about to dive into a long series of 5 minutes into the darkness, then you need to, in a way, fill the eyes and just reset everything just before you go and dive into darkness, for it not to feel too gray. And with Jacques, we always try to work on this feeling of shine, and that's why the first act of the film, which is all happening by night, and that's a blessing for a cinematographer to receive a script that's beginning with a first act completely by night. This first act is lit mainly with practicals at night, especially in the market scenes. El Allegato, we just imported little lights from street markets in Mexico, and yes, this one. And because this scene is recreated in a studio, the backgrounds are blue screens.
Well, because I wondered, in this incredible transition that happens right here, where it goes into, like, I didn't know if it was a cut and it was like seamlessly blended, or
no, it's a cue, it's a lighting cue. So there's everything switches off, like the market stalls, the background, the buildings in the background, everything switches off on this cue. And obviously we worked on much longer takes on the day, and the edit is very fast, so you don't always maybe notice how the things also happen inside the takes.
It reminded me of some of the stuff in Euphoria, where it's these night exteriors and they're doing huge lighting changes. lights, in these incredible things where it
Yeah,
feels like you expect it on a stage in a way, but like this one tricked me really well. It really, really good in a
but
way.
I think it's actually maybe this sequence that made Jacques decide that he wouldn't shoot on location, because this kind of unrealistic or not too realistic or not at least too stuck to the ground way of imagining things was impossible to do in the streets that we had been scouting in Mexico, because
Yeah.
he had to be able to suddenly be on a black stage like he would be if the film was an opera. And so all of the market stalls that were moving around her have an onboard battery, a DMX receiver, and everything is on a console, and everything is switching on and off as it turns around her, or as the camera turns around her. And yeah, that was a challenge, maybe also as a cinematographer, and as for me the first time I was on a project of this scale, because the movie was like made with 14 millions, which is quite a lot in France compared to independent production, at least. And yeah, we decided to light this in only with practicals, so that was like pretty scary, I must say, on the day before I was.
What did you shoot? Tell me a little bit about your kit.
So we shot on Sony VENICE 1 and 2, and with the Tribe 7s. At first, when it was more due to be maybe like an opera on very often black background, I thought I would use anamorphic, and we did tests with that. And I think Jacques has a thing that he refused to talk in terms of he refused to use the technical words, but I'm sure he perfectly knows what anamorphic is, but it was not really convincing him. And then I did another battery of tests with just Blackwing lenses that I had, and a Sony Alpha 7, just to find the look of the market, and it just stopped everything and said, okay, this is the look of the film, I want it to look exactly like that. So I went to a Sony sensor with those lenses that I like, and it was giving something a bit maybe more straight or more controlled than anamorphic, also maybe more with more resolution. But we were able to still play with those flares when you have a practical in the frame, or a very strong highlight, then you can add some life and vibrancy into it. Also had found like this, for example, on very bright lights, these T-tuned, they have kind of a yellow cyan fringing instead of purple, purple blue fringing, which is something very strange and that I like, actually. So
Here, yeah.
and yeah, this scene is shot actually in Mexico in a small apartment, and it's like I'm alone in the flat at this time. I'm just doing the focus. Also, it's a super small crew. So that's the film.
Were you utilizing 3200 ASA and the power of that Venice too, or is it?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and the Venice. So one of the reasons also for the Venice was like in a studio, especially when you're on a budget. If you have a day scene like we have in Switzerland, for example, during the snowstorm,
Is that also on stage?
that's on a white stage.
Well, I wondered only because it has that really, obviously just, and again, that idea that like when you say not film school in a good way, like that the director was like, let's just embrace anything, is that idea that, oh, well, we could just put a lot of atmosphere here, and that's, or even the car pulling through in this really, and then you repeat that shot later when they leave, or, a year later. It's like all of that I just thought were really creative solutions to giving the movie scope. It's so interesting. Sometimes when you're talking, I'm smiling because I'm thinking there's so much overlap between my experience with Joker with, in the sense of like the decision to, like the idea of being on stage, because it gave you this, like the LED, the dimmer board, it's like it, and obviously the music and all that. It's just a really interesting thing that when there are like these movies that overlap in the same year, and it's not this is about your wonderful film, but it's like it's really interesting for me to listen to you and see such overlap in
Well,
some of the things we had to deal with.
well, I must
We had
say
a
that
little more than we had a little more than 14 million, which I'm sure.
yeah, but the
But
result
nonetheless,
is very, very humbling. The look of this film is completely crazy. With my collaborator Arthur Poe, we are talking a lot about. So Joker 2 was not out yet, but Joker 1 was like, okay, that's how a film could look really. And we
oh,
were
that's nice.
on the left, you can see actually the test that I did alone with that Sony Alpha 7 and the lenses. So that's how we just found the look of the market. And for a
Yeah,
scene like
oh, look
this
at
one,
that.
probably a lot of these shots come from ShotDeck here. So yeah, for a daylight scene on a studio like this one, just the problem is the number of projectors used. So the cost is exponential. So we really needed the sensitivity of the Venice, and strangely in a studio more for day scenes than for night scenes, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's real. If you don't want to shoot like wide open any day scene, then you have to have a sensor that just reacts a lot to light in a way.
That's great seeing that as I knew that it was a limited space, but I didn't suspect that it was on stage
Yeah,
when I
so you can see actually it's very small compared to the feeling of the scene. And again, there the VFX team, they did a very good job in just adding some silhouettes or shapes of building in the far background without any trackers or marking points or anything. Just I don't really know how they did that. Everything was so simple with them, you know. And watching at this notebook that I now worked with GoodNotes, which is a very simple software to use. This document is shared with the team, the director, the assistant directors, and my grip gaffer and camera team. And we just, so it's, there is a lot of, yeah, I draw sometimes like for this, actually this scene is not edited, but we shot it. So I draw, I do little storyboards or moods, and I can put the art department documents, and we can just also our lights on that with my gaffer. So it's, and at the end of the day, when the DIT just send me the images, I just put them in. So let's say we're shooting this scene, and I can just come back to the page just before and see which image we cut from, and then just it's easier on set to slowly build the film in your head.
right. So it's a living document that continues through the whole process.
Completely. So at the end of the process, you almost here we can see these are notes for grading actually. So that's a document, just you have layers and layers and layers, because probably these probably comes from ShotDeck actually, and that's references for what a courthouse can be. And then there is discussions, there is no more ceiling, and then we do this pre-vis at the studio, and then you have like these lighting setups, and on the day we are just, you know, pointing what has been shot by which camera, and so that document is just always evolving. And at the end I just also put like this on-set picture on it.
That's great. Oh, this is remarkable. I love this. You just released this as a book.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a book I would have bought back in the day. I'd still buy. I love those books that have all those details in the behind the scenes. So
yeah, and I'm sure on your website you can find actually this shot today. So that's how much of.
yeah, I love it. Here, let's watch a couple more clips. This long zoom, which is when they're preparing, you know, near sort of no spoilers, you should see the film, but they're sort of preparing for a bit of a battle of sorts. Talk to me a little bit about the use of the zoom and the design behind this.
So so yeah, I think now it's like 3 or 4 shots in the final sequence. But the idea was that so the sequence is happening into this NGO organization that they founded when everything was actually going right, and you think that the movie is going to be super happy, and here you just can feel that the drama is there and there's no way to escape. And so we are just outside of the room. We don't hear the voices, but we hear the clicks of the guns, and it actually makes the music. And you have this long zoom at the end of the sequence, like that goes from the situation to Zoe's face, and like she's alone with this gun and she's not from this world. And to me, that this movement just tells the story that the drama is unfolding. You cannot stop it. Like it's a motorized movement, you can't do anything about it.
Well, and like the zoom has such a different power than the dolly, of course, as we know, but there's something very alluring about it. And what was it, a 12-1, or was it longer than that? I know the shots cut up.
I remember it was a pretty long zoom. It was a 12 times optimal,
Yeah.
which is a pretty big range, So no, it's maybe only one shot that's multiple takes and then edited with different from different versions of the thing. But I remember us doing this very close up after doing the zoom, just saying like, yeah, for editing, let's give them freedom.
Right,
But
exactly.
I would have just shot this one.
But of course, but those are out of our decision. I also, this is an interesting thing, even watching it silent, because of course it tells the story of all these soldiers about to go into war effectively, right? But again, speaks to this lovely choreography that exists in this film when it comes to the music and dance and stuff. Is when the audience watches this specifically, and we'll play it out loud with the sound, it's
I kind of like also with choreography, but with almost everything. Like it's the same with an incredible set, or with if you have like 10,000 extras. It's like to film the drama exactly as if it was not there, but it's still enhancing everything. And even if you do a close-up in a wonderful huge space, and you have like 10,000 people in the background, this close-up is completely made richer by all of this setup. But you don't actually film it like saying like, hey, look at how many extras we have, for example. And
Right.
it's the same with choreography, I think. And I like this scene because we don't really film the choreography. The choreography is there around her, and we just pass it in a way and just focus on the only important thing of the scene, and that's Zoe's face, that she's going to be alone in the car in 2 minutes, and she'll be driving to a terrible situation with a lot of violence.
Well, yeah, that's what I was responding to, is it basically, it took 15-20 seconds before I realized, oh, their weapons are in point, and now it's a beat, and it's like percussion. And at first, it's like, right, it's just we're getting all the weapons ready, and I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. It's an action movie, it's a thriller, it's all the things, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, it's also music and dance and all these things together. And what I really love about this film, and the word I would say is sort of, at times it feels like unbridled, would be the word I would say, is like that it maybe it speaks to that thing you said about almost feeling like you're in film school, where I feel like when you're young, you don't get in your own way of just trying crazy ideas, right? You try sometimes too many, whatever it is. But this the camera work of this scene of Selena waking or trying to stay in bed, and she's this feels unbridled as far as the camera work. Speak a little to that.
No, so Selena is waking up. She's really not happy to be there. She's been brought to Switzerland and then from Switzerland back to Mexico. So she's pretty fed up with everything. And Jacques had been writing that she had like dark ideas in the head. And at one point, the dark ideas became dancers and singers, and there was a song made just to illustrate that. So she's enraged, and we just removed one wall from this set that we knew already. we had shot a sequence there. We replaced that wall with 2 very strong lasers, and as soon as she crosses the lasers, there is a grandma operator that just switches off the world on the other side. So on one side you have like a couple of 12 lamps and a lot of yeah, sky panels, and then on this side is just one sky panel, and you can see the laser here around her. And as soon as she will just walk back inside, we have a cue and we just light her room up again, up, and just the sun is back.
Toda bienvenida. Para seguirla usted me caga. Ahora no me chingue, primita. Brincale la pared, querida. Extinguiré mi sed. Bienvenida.
And is this something you tested during prep? And is that, what is your process of like figuring some stuff out in advance of like, obviously?
No, I think it was extensive meetings in Jacques' place with the art department, art director, and yeah, assistant director. A lot of talking about what it could be, and then we decided for that. I have a gaffer. I worked with a gaffer, Thomas Garot, and he's like super impressive in terms of nothing unexpected happens, and something better than expected almost always happens. He always just tells you, okay, I did exactly what we planned, but I also did that, you know, and very often this new idea is much better. so it just makes everything richer, and but yes, there was a lot of tests, you're right, for the lasers, for example, because it's a new technology. We just at first we wanted to materialize this wall much more with smoke, but then it was too much, so we kind of reduced it to just this little ray of light that she goes into.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that before. It was really super creative way of sort of bringing it into an in-camera. And then in terms of the top light here, well, this speaks to that same thing that's a consistency throughout the film, is this black void in which characters kind of now exist in and then go back to the real world and back and forth.
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Even in that reading thing, yeah.
Yeah, I remember just playing it a little bit too safe for that sequence. We just had a soft top light above them, and it was looking a bit more maybe bland, a bit too normal, and just Jacques was very annoyed with something as we were just preparing these rehearsals, and then he kept on saying that, yeah, he had to be harsher or more violent in a way. We just removed everything. It was like 16 sky panels, I think, in this soft box, and just everything was removed, and just one sky panel without anything on it, just naked, and that's the only light of this part of the space. So the room was really looking as we wanted, but the dark space was too normal in a way. So just, and in the end, just working with a single light without any diffusion made it much harsher and better for the scene, actually.
Yeah, let me just jump back in because I have some specific questions about.
At one point, maybe we should talk about the ending scenes. I don't know.
Well, that I would like to talk about that. That was my next big one. That, which of course is something I was very curious about, this entire sequence here.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit, because obviously it's night with no lights. It's one of the more tricky things to do as a cinematographer.
Absolutely,
you know?
Because just before we were talking about how to make a shiny night, and suddenly in this sequence, after a while, they just switch off the lights and you don't have any highlight anymore. So the question is, how do you keep a sense of, how do you keep the blacks in the image, and how do you keep the image alive, because we are just exploring like the bottom 20% of the signal. We had references for this image actually from maybe Nope and Zero Dark 30, which are two films where you have a long sequence happening in night, just moonlit or not even lit by anything, and that's that. So the reflection was like, how do we do in terms of brightness. And one of the solutions, the answers came from the flashes of the muzzle flash, and also from this infrared camera, just because it gives you a very bright image in a way for a few seconds, and then you come back to darkness, but your eye is graded in a way already. So that was one of the solutions. And this sequence is mixing like 3 different kinds of techniques. You have like, this is shot in the quarry, and this is shot in a studio, and actually the space is divided in 2 in the second part of the sequence, because you can see that the gunfight is slow-mo and the song is normal speeds.
Que para no verlos nos pusiste al fondo de la iglesia. ¿Quién eres? ¿Quién eres? Emilia.
We divided the space in 2 with a blue screen. And yeah, this is so there is a blue screen behind the counter, and it's a double. This is in a studio, and the wall is made in VFX, and here a part of the background is fake. This is shot in the quarry.
So this whole the whole chase on the car at the end.
And then so this is shot in a studio also, but the car exteriors, when you see the car from afar, is full 3D, like
Like when it goes down, well, when it sort of crashes.
the chase,
and
everything,
even there.
it's full 3D. So it's a mix of a lot of techniques.
Wow.
And the question was how to match everything, actually. And I must say that Cédric Fayol, the VFX supervisor, and MPC, they did a crazy job here in terms of making the film hold together, because it was so risky. And on the day you are filming like these 400 plus shots with a blue screen in it, and you're like, I'm not a master anymore of what's going to happen to the look of the film. You just give it away to the VFX team.
That quarry. So what are you doing to give like in the widest, most broadest scope shots?
From Nope, we just took the idea also that you can suddenly use a single top light if it's big enough to light a space, and you can, and that was the very modern thing, be very low light in the same time. So
yeah,
that's actually the setup for the quarry. And as you can see, like the backgrounds were extended in post. You have this 200 feet crane on top. And one of the very interesting things that Thomas did, that he not only just placed this vortex in the center, but on each of the 4 corners of this box, you have automatic lights, and he just controls them with the iPad in a split second, and he's able just to to bring a little something to this background road very far away. And
they're movers, right? Yeah, meaning
they move.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're motorized. So you have 4 movers on each corners, and the rest, like the 16 other, I think, are like just vortex.
It's so funny because I think of, like you mentioned, tungsten and HMI and all the techniques of 10, 15, 20, obviously 100 years ago. The mover, I think, is one of those new modern technologies that has made its way into like, narrative features in such a way that I remember talking to Matty Libatique, and he was saying, oh no, we have these movers because then we can just put a little fill by just like attacking one corner of the stage. And I think it's like one of these like secret things that's not so secret anymore that I find so many people use, myself included.
And I think I must say that working with Thomas Garot just made me discover the power of those, like the Hurricane, this new mover, like that has a crazy output and is able to do an impressive amount of things. You just, with 2 of them, you create something that you have never seen, very often. So
it's a real interesting, like, again, this idea of technology helping us do what,
So that was the storyboard actually for this Warner Zoom. So it was designed like this already, in a way.
And is this something that you and Jacques do
Yeah.
together the storyboarding? Is it something that you prefer, or you like shot lists? So what is your sort of...
So very often we decide of an idea together, and actually the very interesting approach of Jacques, and that I will always keep with me, is like he's not necessarily trying to find every frame of a sequence in advance. He's, I think, not even interested in that. But for each sequence, we try to find what we call an image. And the question is, so what is the image of the sequence? And probably for this sequence, the image, yeah, it's a long zoom and you are outside of a room, or for the next sequence, it's a body under a white sheet, for example, or yeah. So for each sequence, the question of finding one image is very liberating in a way, because once you found it, and it's not necessarily a shot, it can be like in his film Deepan, it can be a face with those two lights, red lights blinking in the blur. That's an image, you know. So the image is actually, what do you keep when the sequence is over with you as a visual memory? And we just, it was very simple. It was like one image per sequence, and then the rest can be improvised or determined later or changed with much more freedom, probably.
Yeah, that's a great way to conceive it, right? You don't need all the answers, but you need that one image that can kind of guide the sort of direction of the scene. This document is so amazing. I'm like really super impressed. And is this something you do in all your films? It was a very specific film. Is it something you started doing?
No, I always did. I recently changed and used this more efficient way to work, and I spend much less time doing that. But I've always been like doing basically one sheet per sequence, and then putting all of the infos inside.
That's great. My goodness.
Here is the pre-vis from the VFX department before we shoot. So, you know, I have this, and I know then when I'm shooting that that it goes there. It's not, a lot of people do that, but what I like, it just, this document keeps it very simple, and everything is in the same place, you know. So it's super easy to keep control, especially on a film where you can easily lose like a sense of, okay, where are we? What are we doing? What is it matching?
Oh, it's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love thinking about how movies start, because they're kind of, that's the moment in which you sort of creating a contract with the audience. And this film is no different in the sense of, you know, it starts in a completely black screen with something that almost felt like an abstraction. I had no idea what it was until it pushes closer and closer into this image here. Discover what it is. Was that something written specifically into the script?
The question of the first image was a very tough question for the film. So actually, for a long time, this was not the first shot. It was probably coming after the sequence that was cutted, where you just see the bad guy's murder in the beginning. The guy that Zoe is going to defend. This sequence was shot. It was it was maybe distracting us, or at least the audience was just wondering, okay, what is that murder? Are we going to follow the murderer or the victim, or maybe then the film will be a flashback? Or it was complicating everything. So, but this image of flashes of light in the blur, becoming those musicians, and in a very abstract way. It's not too realistic. You have little LEDs on them. That was probably setting the whole tone of the film, like saying, okay, don't take it too seriously in a way. Also, just know that it's going to be like a dream or an opera about this story, and absolutely not like a documentary.
But was that decision of this film, this being the first shot, done in the edit?
We thought actually that it would be used later as an opening of the second act. So Rita is coming back to Mexico, and to this place that she has, she left and she loves the so that was another start in the film, and it became the actual start.
Listen, Paul, the film, all I'll say to whoever's watching this, if you haven't seen it, hopefully if you've seen it already, this will help you, get it under the skin of the incredible work and the challenges of the film. But if you haven't seen it, beyond this incredibly creative visual style, the movie is just one of the most poignant films I've seen about even transition, transgender, being yourself, all the issues that this film deals with on a human level is incredibly powerful, and I really can't speak enough about how it affected me watching it in a real emotional way, in ways I didn't expect. And I think your camera work and the lighting and the camera movement, all of it together really brought me in ways that I hope to be inspired by any film I watch. And this movie really inspired me and made me excited about film. And I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the filmmakers, and I love that it's on ShotDeck for people to sort of be inspired by and make their next films. Yeah, I really,
especially coming from you, Lawrence, it's humbling as we hear now. I'm very, thank you.
Yeah, well, for everyone out there, go see Emilia Pérez. Hopefully if it's around the world in theaters as well still, and of course on Netflix, where you'll see it, and watch it as big a screen as you can in your home or wherever. And kudos to you, Paul, and to Jacques, and to the actors who are phenomenal. And I'm excited to see what you do next, Paul.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you. Until next time. See you guys at home.